you say our American legislature is broken, period. Doesn't work. Why do you feel that way?
Do I have to answer that question? Don't you feel that way?
Yes, I do, but what do I know?
Well, you know the results. You see it going on all the time. I mean, think about just the last 20 years. Rising income inequality, a huge fall off in the American educational system compared to other countries. Global warming, an enormous environmental catastrophe going on around us all the time. Healthcare, which for the longest time we had the worst healthcare system in terms of coverage of any advanced democracy, any industrial democracy. On and on. A huge list of unaddressed or poorly addressed big national and international problems because our Congress can't do anything. It's fascinating and troubling, but that's the basis of my judgment. And we've been paralyzed for a long time.
When you say Congress,
and it gets worse and worse and worse.
And that's because people just can't agree, and there's too much partisanship. Are these the fundaments of it?
Yes, we have something now completely new to me since 2010. The House Republican caucus is now controlled by people who actually don't believe in government, who actually feel that the country would be better off with a much smaller government, much less intrusive government, etc. A legitimate philosophical position, but one which, when held by the people who are responsible for government, has very risky consequences, very dicey consequences. And this rise of an ideologically fervid anti-government faction into a position of dominance in the House now. They dominate the House. This is a huge departure. And because they measure their own worth, these people, by the degree to which they can uphold and advance their own very extreme ideological agenda, they are not interested in the old-fashioned methods of splitting the difference, finding a common ground, etc.
Does this result in part, Bob, from the fact that House districts have become single-party districts?
Sure, that's part of it.
That's part of it? What else is part of it?
Well, let's think of what are the factors. One is the collapse of the moderate wing of the Republican Party, which used to have a very strong foothold in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, etc.
Northeast Republicans.
And Midwest,
yeah.
Both. And they were largely wiped out. So the Republican Party has become, in the last generation, a party dominated by the South and by religious conservatives. You know, the polling figures are quite startling. More than half self-identifying Republicans are also self-identifying evangelical Christians. This is not a cross-section of America. It is a very specific, very narrow faction, relatively speaking. At the same time, the new America, the diverse America, the black and brown America that has become so significant in national politics, has become almost entirely Democratic, or overwhelmingly. So there are a lot of factors that are dividing the society that are also dividing the Congress. But the redistricting is important, and it's more than just gerrymandering, which is the deliberate drawing of boundaries favorable to the party who gets to draw the boundaries, which has been going on since Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts first did it in the 19th century. But it's also a function of the fact that Americans are sorting themselves out by political and religious inclination. So the young people moving to New York City or Washington, D.C. or San Francisco or Boston in droves tend to be much more liberal, much more tolerant, much more relaxed about homosexuality and gay marriage and things like that.
Is this one of those situations? I think Robert Maynard Hutchins once said something like this. I may have even been there. You just got to wait for people to die off. In other words,
well, but there are a lot of young conservatives too.
Pardon me?
There are a lot of young conservatives in the South.
So it's not just a matter of waiting for
not
people to
only,
die off.
But it's very interesting. In general, it is that, because if you look at the polling now, the under 35s are literally twice as liberal as the over 50s in American life. We're seeing the rise of a millennial generation that is just much more liberal than its parents and grandparents. So it'll be different.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, a leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.